Hey guys, my name's Count Hushman, and today we're going to be checking out the differences between the Jackson Misha Mansoor USA model and the Jackson Misha Mansoor Pro Series Indonesian made model. Let's have a look. So for anyone that's watched my channel before, you'd probably know that this is the guitar that I own, the Jackson Misha Mansoor USA model with the HT7. This is a 7-string variant, and this one is actually a subscriber's guitar which he let me borrow. Thank you, Andrew, for this. I really appreciate it. So now that I have both of them side by side, I've always wanted to know the really intricate differences between these two up close and personal, as opposed to just looking at a spec sheet. Hopefully by the end of the video, if any of you guys are interested in buying any of these guitars, you can kind of weigh up the differences and decide whether you want to go a little bit cheaper with the Indonesian made model or save a little bit more and get the USA. If you guys like this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard. And if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely subscribe. So the way I'm going to go about it is I'm going to talk about this one first, the Pro Series. So we'll just go through the spec sheet and I'll talk about how it feels in my hands, and then we'll go through the spec sheet of this one and talk about the feel as well as my experience, since I've had this for like a year now and I haven't really done a proper review of it. And then what I'll do is I'll get sound clips from both, kind of play the same riffs on each guitar so you guys can hear the sound difference with this stock and this USA model. Andrew, who's the owner of this Pro Series model, again, thank you for letting me use it for this video, is going to be putting Ragnaroks in the bridge and the neck for the pickups. So then hopefully we'll be able to get a comparison between getting this stock and then upgrading the pickups, which I know is something that a lot of people think about when they're going for the Pro Series model. All the sound clips are going to be up on my Patreon, so if you guys want to take those DIs and run them through your own rig and your own tone so you can compare the differences between this one and this one as if it was in your rig, definitely check out my Patreon. I'll leave it in the description. Quick disclaimer, even though this is a USA model guitar, it's a little bit dated, as this one is the one that comes with the hard maple neck, whereas now they all come with roasted maple necks just like this one. However, things like playability and the overall quality of the guitar should be the exact same. Okay, so starting off, this is the Jackson Misha Mansoor Pro Series model, and as you can see, it comes with a roasted maple neck, which is very nice for an Indonesian made guitar. The finish, I believe, is Lambo Orange. I think that's what they're calling it, and I think it's just a nod to the USA models that they did a couple years back, where they were kind of like the same finish with a little bit of sparkle in it. They were actually really nice. Whereas this one I think is a little bit more fluorescent and kind of a little bit shinier, like the poly finish is a little bit thicker. Starting on the back of the guitar for specs, you have Jackson locking tuners. These are just generic Jackson locking tuners that come on the Indonesian models. A black plastic nut, nickel frets. You do get lumen lace side dots, which also comes on the USA version, which is a really nice touch because not a lot of guitars in this price range get lumen lace side dots. Spoke wheel truss rod adjust on the bottom of the neck, which is really handy, and to be honest, I think a lot more other guitar companies should really take that into consideration because it's just so easy. Just pop it in there, quick half turn and it's done, as opposed to like unscrewing a cap up here and then doing it, or in some cases with like fenders and stuff, you'd actually have to like take off the whole neck if they're vintage and do that. Like obviously we've moved past that, but this is just way easier. 5-way selector switch, which actually feels pretty rigid. On some other import guitars I have noticed that they're a little bit like, they don't really lock in too much, but this is like very nice, very clicky. You're not going to accidentally bump it into another setting or anything like that. Standard black dome knobs, with the tone pot being a push-pull pot. So basically what that means is when the tone pot is up, that's when the tone pot is active. So when it's down, you can twist it all you want, it's actually not going to do anything. But if you pull it up, that's when you start to roll your tone off, which is very handy because if you accidentally bump it on stage or something while it's down, it's actually not going to affect your tone. But if you actually want to affect your tone, just a quick little pull up and it's all done. One thing I did notice though was that this tone knob is very flimsy compared to the volume one. Maybe it wasn't just adjusted as tight or something like that. Just a little QC issue, but that's not really a problem. You can just tighten it, I suppose. This is where we start to see a little bit of a disconnect between the USA model and the Pro Series model. So all the Pro Series models come with Jackson MM1 pickups, the in-brand house pickups, as well as a standard black bridge as opposed to the Hipshot bridge that comes on the USA models. I believe that the strap buttons are Dunlop locking, which is really nice. And one thing I will mention is that when the USA model came out, they actually made a really big deal about the horns on the guitar, and because they're so pointy and so thin, they were actually wondering how we're going to get the knobs on the points of the guitar. So the engineers at Jackson kind of mustered up a way to thicken it up a little bit on the point, which isn't really noticeable unless you really look at it. And that's a feature that you can get on the Pro Series model, which is also on the USA, so that's a really nice touch. Speaking of strap buttons though, I did notice that you can turn this and you can turn this one, which means they're just not screwed on that good, but again, a quick turn and it's all good. And if we're really getting personal, we have the 4 recessed bolts that bolt into the neck, so it is a bolt-on guitar, as well as the USA, they're all bolt-ons. And then we have black string ferrules on the bottom. Okay, so now going on to the feel of the guitar. Now, one thing I will mention is the roasted maple neck. Like, as you can see, my hands are just gliding on it so effortlessly. It is so smooth. It's so easy to play on. Like, oh my god, this actually changed the way I think about necks. The profile is pretty much the same as the USA model. It's not really too thin. It's not like Ibanez Wizard thin. It's got a little bit of something to it, so you get a little bit of thumb support, which I kind of like. One thing that the newer models of the Misha Mansoor Pro Series guitars have is the 20-inch radius on the fretboard, which is so flat, but so nice. Especially when you're playing this type of music, it's really nice to like be consistent on the fretboard. Everything's fairly flat and you can get your action really low. This is opposed to when they first came out, and I'm pretty sure they had 16-inch radiuses, which kind of set them apart from the USA's, but now they fall in line with the 20-inch radius, again bridging the gap between the Pro Series and the USA model. Going back to the roasted maple, like bending on a 20-inch radius neck with the roasted maple is so smooth, it's ridiculous. It just feels really nice to play, and all the body cuts like that, like on the back you can see here is pretty deep. The horns here, they're beveled in as well. Like all the calves, all the handshake heel, all that stuff, it's the exact same as the USA model. Like every dimension of this guitar is more or less the same as the USA model. It's just certain specs on it that aren't the same. And one of those is the black plastic nut. Now, one thing I did notice when I was restringing this guitar for the sound clips was that the nut wasn't actually glued on properly. Like it kind of fell off. I'll show you a clip of that now. Okay, so I just did a restring and the nut just pretty much slipped off. It looks like it wasn't really glued in at all, to be honest. Because I noticed that when I strung it up, it was kind of hanging off like this. I was like, wait a second, was it like that? Surely I saw that. And I looked back on the footage and realized that it was up to there. So in the process of restringing, it must have just slipped off upwards a little bit. So now I've just kind of loosened up all the strings again, and I'm going to try hold it there and restring it up again, which is kind of disappointing, but that's fine. So yeah, again, little QC issues on the Indonesian models, but that can just be fixed with a little bit of glue. But again, it's just disappointing that that was the case. But to just fix that for the time being, I kind of had to like hold it in place as I was restringing, and the tension of the strings was like pulling it away, and I really had to hold it down. But that's all good for now because there's strings on it and it's kind of close up to the fingerboard. So when Andrew gets this back, he can take it to a tech and he can sort that out. In terms of like overall playing, I've spent a lot of time with my HG7 USA, and to be honest, like playing this one, it feels the exact same in my lap. Like my hands in the same position. The way I move around the neck is, if not smoother because of the roasted maple, but like in terms of hand positions and stuff like that, it's all the same. If you're a 6-string player and wondering like how would I transition to a 7, does it feel stupid long? Not with this guitar, and that's the same as the USA, and I'm pretty sure that's because the nut width on these 7-string models are just a little bit shorter than most 7-strings from other brands. So that being a little bit shorter, it kind of tapers off less towards the heel of the neck and kind of just feels a little bit thinner. And to be honest, the transition between 6 and 7 on this guitar wouldn't be that big of a deal. Which is kind of why I wish Misha and Jackson collaborated on an 8-string Pro Series model. I know Periphery don't really do any 8-string stuff anymore. I don't think they've done it since like 2015 in the Juggernaut days, but if they did have an 8-string Pro Series model, if you got the playability of this and transferred that to an 8, it would actually be really nice. One big difference between this Pro Series model and my USA model, I can't say it's the same with the newer USA models because I believe that they have a roasted basswood body and a roasted maple neck, which would heavily affect the weight of the guitar. But this is a basswood body, I'm pretty sure, and obviously it's a roasted maple neck. So having a light basswood body along with the roasted maple neck, when you're sucking out the moisture of a maple neck, it does make it lighter, does make everything a little bit more stable. Whereas that one is an older body with a thick maple cap on it and just a standard maple neck, ebony fretboard, stuff like that. It's a very heavy guitar, and this is much lighter than the USA one, and that's something I noticed straight away when I picked this up. One really nice feature about this Pro Series model as well, which kind of also falls in line with the USA, is that the back of the neck actually has 2 graphite reinforcements next to the truss rod. So there'd be the truss rod in the middle and then 2 graphite reinforcements along the side of the neck, which again goes an extremely long way in terms of the stability of the neck and how the guitar feels and plays. And that's something that you definitely won't get on a lot of Indonesian made guitars in this price range. However, as with all Indonesian made guitars and cheaper guitars in general, there will be some cosmetic drawbacks that come with QC issues and stuff like that. So like I mentioned before, the toe knob's a little bit loose, the strap buttons, you can kind of twist them. One thing I noticed straight away was that all the cavities of the guitar, like the bolts on the back of the neck, are extremely rough and paint's chipping off. Like getting your finger in there and kind of rubbing your finger is actually really rough. The string ferrules and stuff like that, they're not really banged in evenly. Like some are kind of sticking out and others are really flush with the body. The neck pocket, again, there's like a little bit of paint issue, like it's kind of overlapping or chipping off, and the neck pocket isn't super tight. Like I can see a little bit of a gap here. Again, the pickup cavities are a little bit rough inside, and you can see the paint chipping off if you have a look down there. But again, if you weren't looking for these things, you wouldn't really notice them. And again, they don't really affect playability. So it's not that big of a deal. It's just if you're looking for something and you want it to be perfect, just don't expect it to be perfect when you're buying a cheaper guitar. However, when you do take into consideration all the specs of the guitar as well as the feel of it, you start to wonder how this is like so cheap, because you could probably get this secondhand in Australia for like maybe anywhere between $1,000 and $1,100, which is like maybe $650, $750 American, which is extremely cheap for the features you get on this guitar, like the graphite reinforcements of the neck, lumen lace side dots, roasted maple neck, locking tuners, like all that stuff is very hard to come by on guitars in this price range. So now we're going to talk about the USA model, kind of talk about the specs and the feel a little bit more briefly, and then we'll get a sound comparison going. So for anyone that's watched the channel before, they will be very familiar with this guitar. This is my Jackson Misha Mansoor USA model HD7 in amber tiger eye finish. This thing is my absolute pride and joy. I love this guitar and I'm super happy with it, but I'm going to try be as unbiased as possible when comparing it to the Pro Series model. So again, starting off with specs, this one you get Hipshot open gear locking tuners as opposed to just the Jackson branded locking tuners that you get on the Pro Series model, and these with the open gear and like the gold kind of gear and stuff like that. It's really nice to look at. You get a black Graphtec nut instead of the black plastic nut that's on the Pro Series models. Again, this is a quarter-zone maple neck. As you can see, it's a little bit lighter than the roasted maple. It's not roasted, but the newer models of the USA do come with the roasted maple. And the fingerboard is ebony, a very dark thing of ebony, I might add. And there is binding across the side of the neck, going up to the headstock all the way around, just on the neck. And it also does come with lumen lace side dots. A big difference between this and the Pro Series model is that this is a stainless steel fret guitar, whereas the Pro Series model is nickel fret. And especially with 7 strings and stuff, because the strings are so thick and you're giving it such a beating, you probably will have to refret a lot quicker with nickel frets than stainless steel frets. So having stainless steel frets is really nice on the USA model. However, when you look at the price range of this guitar, I think if you were to get a 2019, 2020 model of a USA Jackson Misha Mansoor in Australia, it's probably anywhere between 4,500 to 5,500 Australian dollars, which is around like $3,000, 3,500 American. So it is very expensive. So you should not be compromising anything when you're paying this much for a guitar. Again, spokeable truss rod adjust on the bottom, super nice feature. However, the disconnect between the USA model and the Pro Series model is very evident when you look at the hardware. So these are Bareknuckle Juggernauts. These are Misha Mansoor's signature pickups with Bareknuckle, the first signature set that he ever put out. I'm pretty sure the newer models come with the Ragnaroks. I think if you get a 7 string, they come with the Ragnaroks, and if you get a 6 string, they come with bare knuckles, or you can pick if you order it from the Jackson website. I'm not too sure, but you do have the choice of 2, and you also get the Hipshot bridge as opposed to the Jackson branded bridge, which is really nice and super comfortable. Again, just like the Pro Series model, a 5-way pickup selector switch. Even though the Pro Series model, like I said, that was clicky, but this is ridiculously clicky. Like, it locks in super nice. It's just really nice to play with, and it feels really premium when you're playing with it. Holding this guitar up to show you guys the features is getting a little bit of a task because, again, this is a little bit heavier. The knobs are a little bit different on this one, so I'm pretty sure these are Hipshot branded knobs as opposed to just the standard black metal knobs that you get on the Pro Series model. These do have like a ring grip on it, which is really nice and really easy to pull up and twist and stuff like that. Again, tone pot, push-pull, so that only works when it pulls it up. 20-inch radius on the neck on this one as well, I forgot to mention, which is the same as the Pro Series model, which is really nice, super flat, so you can get your action really nice and low, and it's really nice to play on. And the string ferrules as well are black on this one. Now, talking about the feel of this guitar compared to the Pro Series one. So straight away, again, like I mentioned with the Pro Series one thing I noticed straight away was that roasted maple neck. And even though this is smooth, like it's very smooth, it's a smooth oil finish on a maple neck, it's just not as smooth as that one. And that could be just like a build up of my playing, like my hands being on the neck. Maybe it just needs like a quick wipe down or something like that to get it being a little bit more comparable to that one. But that is slightly smoother, and you definitely do know the difference when playing it. However, like I mentioned before, this is the older series of the USA models, and the newer ones do come with the roasted maple neck. Like I was saying before, where you rest your hand, the way it sits on your lap, all that stuff is exactly the same because it's the exact same dimension of guitar. The nut width being a little bit shorter is the same. The neck profile is the same. The fingerboard radius being 20 inches is all the same. So generally the feel of the guitar, the feel of playing it, how your hands move around it, where your hand rests when you're palm muting, all that stuff is exactly the same. They're both 26.5 inches as well. I forgot to mention that. I'm in scale length, so especially when you're tuning down to drop A flat on this 7, which is what periphery you tune to, it does help with that little bit of extra tension and that extra inch. Another premium feature that do come on some variants of the USA models that don't come on the Pro Series models are these thick maple caps. So I'm pretty sure you can get USA models that don't have these thick maple caps that are a little bit cheaper. They're kind of just like a one color finish, but they're really nice. It's like Daphne blue. And again, there's that red one as well with the roasted maple neck, which I've always wanted to play. Some Pro Series models do have a quilted maple veneer on the top of the guitar, as opposed to this being an actual 1/4 inch slab of maple on the top of the guitar. So you do get like kind of the same look, but you don't get anywhere near as much detail and depth with the actual slab. And I'm pretty sure this is a 5A grade slab of quilted maple on the top, which is a very, very high grade, very high quality slab of maple. And you can definitely see that in the paint job. The finish on this guitar is second to none. Like, even though that's just like a one color finish, like the general detail of this finish is absolutely amazing. Like, there's not one single thing wrong with it, especially when you take a look at the natural binding. You might have a look at this guitar and just think like, oh, it has binding, but in reality it's actually natural binding. So what they've done is they've taped off the sides of the guitar, so you basically get the paint job coming all the way through apart from the edge here, so you actually see the figurines of the quilt maple cap around the binding, which is super, super nice, and it's one of my favorite cosmetic features of this guitar. So talking about general feel and just the quality of the instrument, this is much heavier than the Pro Series one, but like I mentioned before, that just comes down to the bodywoods that are used nowadays as opposed to the ones that come with the newer ones. But in having a heavy guitar, I personally feel like it's just like a little bit more premium feeling, if that makes sense. But the premium features do come at a cost, of course. I can't really explain the difference in words, but like when you pick a USA guitar up and play it, just the way it plays, the way everything's kind of tightly compact, everything's very rigid, everything's very premium feeling. There's no really other feeling like it when you're playing on a guitar of this price point and this value. And that obviously comes at a very, very high cost in some instances, but I was lucky enough to get this guitar fairly cheap. But completely disregarding that, like there definitely is a difference in terms of like overall feel of a USA model compared to a Pro Series model. And again, I can't really explain in words, but just the way it plays, the way it feels, like the general build quality, how rigid it feels, how premium it feels, you definitely notice a difference when you're playing a USA made guitar. And of course that brushes off on everything cosmetically about the guitar. Like there is not a single thing on this guitar cosmetically that is a flaw. Like the binding is perfect, the pickup routes are perfectly routed, perfectly smooth, perfectly painted. All the bolts on the back of the guitar are perfectly routed, perfectly smooth, perfectly painted again. The string fells are almost like ridiculously in line with each other. Like they must have measured it like a millimeter or a couple millimeters off each one, because it is absolutely perfectly in line. Like the neck pocket is super, super tight. There is not a single air gap in this neck pocket. It's super, super in there, super rigid feeling. Everything just feels super, super nice. I can't stress that enough about the USA model. However, it's up to you as a consumer to decide whether you want to justify spending another couple $1,000s on some cosmetic differences as well as like a little bit better build quality, whereas you can get that for like maybe $1,000. Throw in a couple pickups in there and it could sound very, very similar to this one. So now that we've had a talk about the specs and the feel of both the Pro Series model and the USA model, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a couple sound clips kind of going through all the pickups on each guitar and kind of playing the same riffs on both, so you guys can hear the differences mainly between the Jackson Misha Mansoor branded pickups and the Bareknuckle Juggernauts that are in this guitar. So without further ado, let's get into it. And there you guys have it. So those are the differences between the Jackson Misha Mansoor Pro Series model and the Jackson Misha Mansoor USA model. Let me know what you guys think. Would you rather buy this one and maybe upgrade it a little bit, or even just keep it stock? Or would you rather save a little bit more and get the fancy USA version? Definitely let me know in the comments. Again, if you want to get the sound clips of everything I just played and put it through your own rig and your own tone so you can compare the differences of these two guitars in your own context, definitely check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description. As always, if you guys liked this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you saw or heard. And if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely think about subscribing. Hopefully the next time you see this really nice Pro Series guitar, it'll be with Ragnaroks in the bridge and the neck, so we can do a sound comparison between the Jackson branded pickups and the Bareknuckle Ragnaroks, and I might even throw the Bareknuckle Juggernauts with this one as well. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Ciao.